When can I buy a chiplet? A chiplet ecosystem is under development, but many barriers must be overcome before a thriving marketplace can exist. The 1 year ago, the semiconductor engineering conducted its first roundtable to find out the true state of the industry for chiplets. At the event, it was stated that no chiplet had ever been reused in a design, for it was not initially intended. How much has it changed over the past year? Returning from the last year were Mark Kremler, Vice President of the Technology for Marvel, Letizia Giaino, Vice President of the Product Marketing and Management at Alpha Web Semi, Hisuri, HSD segment lead for KSI, Mick Passner, Senior Product Group Director at Cadence's Computer Solution Group, and Rob Kruger, Product Management Director for Synopsys Multi-Die Strategy of Solution Group. What follows excerpt from roundtable discussion held at this year's Design Automation Conference. Part 2 of this discussion is here, and part 3 is here. Let's see. At this time last year, a similar panel of experts said that chiplets faced many hurdles and the reuse has not yet been accomplished. There were a lot of problems to be solved, and many obstacles had to be overcome. It was clear that not all of the obstacles were even identified, and there was certainly no consensus about how they should be solved. How much progress that have made in the past years, and are we unclear about path forward? Why can I buy a chiplet today? So the Kremler, I've been a fan of chiplets for many years, especially since the beginning of the movement. When Marvel started getting involved in this, we envisioned this grand idea where we'd be able to source chiplets on an open market, so do any given function. We would be able to define interfaces and protocol layers that would allow them to communicate together. We were completely wrong. It was important that we had this bold drive because it forced us to go and figure out how to start the ball rolling. But what we've learned by implementing many systems with multiple chiplets and chiplets, that with the 2.5D integration strategy, we plan design down to the micron from an alignment point of view. Beyond that, we have to plan so that the next layer up can communicate effectively between the chiplet in the most efficient manner. I really want to optimize a system. There tend to be bespoke systems. However, I do want to add one change that I've been over the past couple of years. These are the years when I said the chiplet or tail that is waiting the dog. The idea is that a chiplet are defining the rest of the system. We have a standard chiplet that does a standard function that multiple people want. That the system can get defined around the chiplet. We can achieve these things very much. Everybody up to the micron, because the rest of the system is there built around it. We are at this incremental baby steps, and we are starting to get a point where chiplet can be used for a multiple project. But it does mean that we can take two chiplets and plug them together. While we can independent chiplet, the glue has to be very bespoke to make those chiplets work together. We are getting further, but we are not at this open market idea yet. Giuliano, you asked when you could buy a chiplet. Actually, we are showing a chiplet on the floor at the Design Automation Conference. Our own standard chiplet. We asked to the industry if there were a way to aggregate the system today, and the easy way is to segregate the IOs. This is because they are so standardized. Connectivity is ubiquitous, and almost every device has the same interfaces that allow it to connect to the rest of the year. Ethernet, PCI Express. It's a natural way to capture the system standardize how we do I/O do the chip. We did that with a large investment from our side, but it was also a response to the marketing need for dividing the system into chiplets. You're correct that we design around the chiplet that are available. Once people see that the chiplet is available and decide to use it, they start to organize the system based on what you have. Now we are creating momentum around that IO chiplet. I accept that there are some issues. Definitely, there is a lot of standardized missing. The world has not yet standardized the design of the interface. We are missing many layers in the standardization. We do have something around the UCI, but it is missing some important pieces. The protocol layer is not standardized. That is a big gap. And we also have other layers in terms of the form factor standardization. But we are in the pioneers. We are trying to make sure that we solve the problems, and we have started building solutions so that people can build around them. Is that good enough for a company like Marvel to buy your chiplet? It depends. You certainly can get a first degree when you have a chiplet that may be available. You talk with the provider and you figure out where the fits into the puzzle that you are trying to solve. One of the things we struggle with that are calling the scaling technology is slowing down, but our customers aren't slowing down in their need to keep getting as much out of technology as they can. The floor plans are growing bigger and bigger. The larger the floor plans get, more complicated they get. The harder it is to fit a given chiplet that you may find on the open market into that increasingly complex device. You find a lot of times that you really have to make a bespoke chiplet for some of the most complex applications. If you are making the something a little bit simpler, something that needs the 64 lanes of 1 in 12 gig service, that might make a lot of sense. Perhaps you could purchase something from the open market and you have more degrees of the freedom from an architectural point of view to put those pieces together. If you are building a really big Lego house, you probably want to more purpose-made Lego blocks that makes it look nice and fit together perfectly. Whereas if you just want to put some wheels together and make a thing that looks like a car, you can probably do it. There are different levels of integration, and it makes difference about where you can use them. Juliana, there is no solution that fits all. It needs to be customized for a specific application or use case. Posner, 2 years ago I made a prediction. I said that chiplet marketplace was 10 years ago away. By that reckoning, we have 8 years to go. It's not like everything has stood still. There has been a progress, and I believe it's coming in a couple of areas. First of all, let's discussing it. Multi-die has become a lot of mature, and it is understood in a couple of years was still visionary cell. When you design increases in scale, can you scale the package? No, that's tried to true now, and the standards around it have started to mature. UCI has matured. I'm introduced the digital system architecture, and that solves a little bit more of the puzzle. And then ecosystems are coming up. One example is the IMAC Automotive Chiplet Program, ACP, that look at the problem from the slightly different angle. And they solve one of the part of the puzzle. The realization of standard processes and manufacturing have matured to a point where I now believe that there is a chiplet marketplace in future. We are moving in the right direction. Figure 1. Chiplet. New way to build SoC. Source cadence. Yeah. SE, do you still think it'll take another 8 years? Ah, yes, for production. The other things we have to deal with is terminology. The chiplet is a floated function, and right from the start, I already have to explain to people what we mean. Finally, people have to start to understand that at bespoke systems where people are doing a multi-die design, and they are doing it because they are forced to eat it. And there's a chiplet, where you expect to take a piece of IP from a third party and integration that into your system. It has become very application and account-centric and consider-server AI. There are specific applications, I/O disaggregation, memory disaggregation, and automotive. You gotta compute disaggregated from I/O, disaggregated from AI. There seems to be a small leap to the chiplet marketplace after constrained into an application-specific area. Rather than just broadly saying there's going to be a marketplace. Kruger. HBM is probably the shining star for the chiplet marketplace, but people want more. There's always gonna be room for customization and the desire to have something that goes beyond the standard and is different than a standard. That's always gonna happen with the biggest players. Then you have a chiplet that has predefined shape, and that means you have to design the rest of the system to match. You might not have the freedom to move it UCIe, or maybe you have some other constraint on how the files are stacked. That might happen because of the form factor and what's sitting to it. There's many aspects that have to be considered at the system level. Eventually, there will be a off-the-shelf chiplet, but there's also this need for customization. There's gonna be a balance. The question is, for commercial chiplets, is there in a big enough market where people are willing to make some concession, either on size or power? Lee, generally speaking, I agree. A standard application is very important, but you also need the ecosystem. But it's only one part of the design. Where are those chiplets coming from? A lot of IDMs are making chiplets. But when I looked at the design itself, and maybe in a chiplet, thought, but it's not completely following the standard because they have their own needs. They have their own verification facilities, so they can design the other structures in a similar manner, but not exactly following the standard. This does not enable plug and play. This is where I see a gap. It takes time. Once you move outside of a custom-driven approach to being standard-driven, including UCIe and bunch of wires, then we will see a lot of more opportunity. But based on the trend in the market and technologies, it could be quite a long time. I'm not saying how many years, but in order for the market to mature, It would take several years of the investment. When looking at a package in the past and then considering the emergence of chiplets, it is important to think about how this is different from system in package. There's a lot of packaging technology that gets mixed in with the system within the single package. The technology is more mature and ready to go for the implementation of chiplets compared to the situation 10 years ago. It is possible that we can make this real now, but still, how are we gonna get rid of those boundaries? How does the industry migrate from wanting everything custom into more standardized way of integration? This is where the industry needs to focus. Okay, today I read this article on can I buy a chiplet. Thank you for your time. See you next time.